So since Telltale decided to release the first 2 episodes of their new season of The Walking Dead called A New Frontier at the same time, it's only fitting that I bring you guys 2 videos in one day. This is more work than I do at actual work. So here's my review of episode 2, Ties That Bind, part 2. And here I will be delving into some more spoilery territory. I'm not going to delve too much into it, but there's going to be minor spoilers, actually a couple of minor ones, a couple of big ones. So if you guys don't want to know any big plot details about Telltale's newest season thus far, then please tune out now, and you can check out my review of part 1, episode 1, Ties That Bind, part 1, where I keep it spoiler free and I give you guys my opinions on the story so far, as well as the technical aspects about the game, including the visuals and the aesthetics and what type of direction they're taking this new season into, without ruining anything. So please check that out. I'll post an annotation or I'll put a link in the description, something like that. But if you already played it, then please stick around. I'm going to be spoiling the shit out of it, or at least most of it. So we kick things off with a little bit of a flashback that I'll go ahead and talk about in broader detail later on when it comes to tying it into certain things that happen at the end. But before I get to that, we kick things off with where we left off in the cliffhanger from last episode, after Javier tossed that dynamite stick or grenade or tear gas, whatever the hell that was. And from that point on, it all becomes a matter of choice. Something that sadly I feel like I kind of omitted from my episode 1 review, which is that the gameplay fits. I've always felt like this form of gameplay that Telltale has always done has fitted the property of The Walking Dead better than it has other properties. I recently played the Telltale Batman series, and in there were some choices that mattered, and then there were a few that kind of really didn't, especially when it came to the whole balancing act of trying to make decisions as Batman that are going to have repercussions as on your life as Bruce Wayne. And by the end of the season, that really did not matter a whole lot. Here it comes back to form where your decisions could determine who lives and who dies, and that's always been the hook that Telltale has always had with The Walking Dead. And here I had that feeling come back again, where certain decisions, whether it be lines of dialogue, whether it be me giving myself up there at the beginning or just talking to somebody later on, was going to have an effect. There's a moment where I grabbed a water bottle, and just grabbing that water bottle, I'm like, this is going to be either really good or really bad. And thankfully it panned out well, because it turned out that I could use that water bottle later on Kay to help her rehydrate herself. But just as easily somebody could have turned around and be like, hey, you stole my water bottle, or something like that. And I'm loving that The Walking Dead brings that feeling back, something that wasn't really found in the Batman game. And going back to some much more mechanical things that Telltale would do, which is for you to explore the environment, to kind of interact with the environment, it feels a whole lot better, especially when you bring back that reticle. It feels better here than it did in Batman. Telltale brings that sense of suspense back when you're walking around a certain environment, and then all of a sudden Walker could appear and either kill somebody or put you at risk. There's even something that I was kind of complaining about with the Batman series, where there were certain moments where you would just be on a rail and you would move Batman or Bruce down a corridor or something like that, and nothing would really happen. And I'm like, why is this interactive? Why is this a form of gameplay? Why can't you just make it a cutscene and just skip over it instead of having me go, okay, press the stick forward, moving forward? Here we had that happen once, but it was effective because it's The Walking Dead. At any moment something could go wrong, something could scare me, so it's just a matter of turning that jack-in-the-box lever and boom, something could pop up. So the slew of consequences that we're left with by the end of the episode, from the falling of Prescott to having to shoot Conrad in the face to keep Clementine safe, it all really resonated with me and brought me closer to Javier as a character, because those choices did have some weight to them. And sure, there's always going to be the whole controversy of how some of these choices are kind of like the same thing, only with a few details swapped out for others because of the choices you made. But still, I feel like I am tailoring the story, just like Telltale always advertises at the beginning of their episodes. Especially as I keep forming these relationships with either people from Javier's past, like Kate, who we see in that flashback, and it looks like maybe they had a little thing going on, maybe they didn't, and now she's in peril after being shot in the stomach. But also some new people that I met through Javier, meeting them for the first time as well. It's just like Trip. I'm getting closer to Trip. I'm liking him more as a character as well. And then we get a brand new character in this second episode. Well, kind of brand new. As soon as he pops up, as soon as we see his silhouette, we know who it is, and some of the images that we have seen from the menu kind of spoiled it already. But Jesus is in the episode, or Paul, if you want to call him. Jesus from the original Walking Dead comic and now the TV show appears in A New Frontier, and so far I'm really liking this interpretation of Jesus. It still stays true to his embodiment in the comics as well as the TV show, and Telltale knows what's up. Telltale knows that he's becoming much more prominent in the show, so like, we gotta put him in there. They could have easily put in any other comic book character from that iteration, but I'm glad that they went with Jesus because he fits this dynamic. I like how he talks to this other people, and I know that choice that they gave you where they're like, tie him up or trust him. We know who it is. We know what type of character he is. 94% of people decided to trust him because we know it's Jesus. Come on. And towards the end, we get another Clementine flashback, which is what I mentioned in my episode 1 review, where there was a new switch in perspective that gave you more to think about when it came to character development, and that is the ability to jump into the shoes of Clementine from time to time. Whenever that screen goes to black, you're black and white, you know that you're about to jump into the role of Clementine, just like you did in season 2. And initially, it looked like they were just going to be fitting in the gaps between season 2 and season 3, especially in episode 1, where you sadly saw the death of Jane, which really punched me in the gut because they had to do her like that. But at the same time, who did she get pregnant from? I'm imagining it had to do with that family who ended up being assholes and took away our shit. And I was like, man, I trusted them. Oh my god, nothing is sacred. Nothing is sacred in this world. But in the second flashback, we find ourselves a little bit closer to present day. And before I kind of tear that flashback apart, we should note that the New Frontier is actually the group that Javier has been dealing with this entire time that ended up killing Mariana at the end of episode 1. That's why the season is called The New Frontier, because we're actually dealing with this brand new people that kind of have this mindset that's somewhat abiding by rules, but in a very aggressive way. But not everybody's in line, as we saw at the beginning of this episode. Right before Prescott falls, we have a guy that wants to do things somewhat accordingly, and then we got a wild, trigger happy dude that's just willing to bring the gates down. But it was through the second flashback as Clementine that we learned that she wasn't necessarily captured by the New Frontier. She was part of them. She was branded. She met this girl while she was protecting a slightly older but still baby AJ, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that came about, especially since we don't necessarily see her join the group here in this episode. We're probably gonna have to wait until 3 or 4 to learn more about that, especially when she comes back in some capacity after running off at the end of this episode. I know she's gonna come back. It's Clementine. She's got to be back and become much more prominent for the season, and not just be in the first 2, be gone for like an episode or 1. I'm gonna be a little disappointed if she's gone for the entirety of episode 3. There's got to be something more to her and her relationship with the New Frontier than just that. And I'm loving that connection, but this kind of brings me to the other connection that I'm not a huge fan of. It just seems too much of a coincidence, and that's the big twist that we get at the end of this episode, which is that David, oh my god, my name is way too common, I'm tired of hearing it. You know how many Davids I keep hearing at work? What's your name? David. But David, Javier's brother, older brother I believe, is actually the leader of the New Frontier. That explains the somewhat compassionate but very much aggressive personality behind the New Frontier, because we saw that not only in episode 1 where he was willing to beat Javier, to literally beat some sense into him, but then almost the next moment he's like, I love you, brother. Just like we saw in this flashback where we have him kind of barge into a little argument. You got the cup, you got the little aggressive tone, but then he kind of understands it. He kind of emitted that personality over to this new group, and I just feel like on the one hand, it was a very surprising twist that I didn't see coming, but on the other, I'm like, this is too much of a coincidence. It kind of reminds me how everything needed to be tied in the prequels of the Star Wars movies, where everybody knows everybody. I was kind of hoping for a different character, or at least a character that had lesser of a connection with Javier, but was still in that past somehow that we would kind of be revealed to. I don't know. I was just expecting a little bit different. Despite not being any less surprising, I thought it was just too much of a coincidence for it to be David this whole time. So consider that's my only problem with episode 2. I consider this to be a very satisfying continuation of part 1 that felt like one entire episode, but because that would have made for like a 3.5, almost 4 hour episode, they decided to split it up, even though Walking Dead season 1 kind of started off that way with like 3 almost 4 hour episodes, depending on how much you explore the environment around you. But still, no less of a satisfying episode that felt just right up there with the first one, and definitely keeping that impression onto me that this is going to be a very good season for Telltale's Walking Dead. So I'm going to be giving episode 2, Ties the Bind Part 2, same exact rating, a high 8 out of 10. I'm looking forward to seeing how episode 3 pans out and what kind of involvement Jesus is going to play, and when is Clementine going to come back. If you guys have any kind of feedback to those questions, please let me know in the comments below. Like and share this video and subscribe for future reviews, including the Assassin's Creed movie review. Gonna be trying to do that very, very soon. I'm looking forward to it, for better or for worse, as well as some gameplay videos, vlogs, all that fun jazz. So please stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. See you later.